There's a strange pattern emerging in wellness clinics across North America. Women over 45 are doing everything right. They're eating oatmeal for breakfast, choosing fat-free yogurt, blending fruit smoothies packed with vitamins. They're following every guideline their doctors gave them. And yet, something peculiar is happening. Their metabolism isn't just slowing down. It's changing in ways that seem almost backwards. Weight that used to take weeks to lose now clings to their bodies stubbornly. Energy that once carried them through entire days now fades by noon. And the most puzzling part? The very foods they were told would protect their health seem to be connected to the decline. Dr. Elena Voss spent 17 years as a clinical endocrinologist before she noticed the pattern. Her patients, almost exclusively women in their late 40s and 50s, were compliant. They followed meal plans religiously. They tracked calories. They eliminated sugar. But their lab results told a different story. Insulin resistance was climbing. Inflammation markers were elevated. And their bodies were storing fat at rates that didn't match their caloric intake. The wellness industry had given them a roadmap. But something about that roadmap wasn't working for their changing biology. The breakthrough came during a routine examination of a 52-year-old patient named Margaret. Margaret had been eating the same breakfast for 3 years, steel-cut oats with blueberries and a drizzle of honey. She'd read about it in a heart health magazine. Her doctor had approved it, but her fasting glucose levels were creeping higher every 6 months. Dr. Voss decided to run an experiment. She asked Margaret to eliminate the oatmeal for just 2 weeks and replace it with eggs and avocado. Within 10 days, Margaret's glucose normalized. Her energy returned. She lost 4 pounds without changing anything else. The oatmeal, the food she'd been told was heart-healthy, appeared to be interfering with her metabolic function. This wasn't an isolated case. Dr. Voss began examining the breakfast patterns of her other patients and found the same phenomenon repeating. The women eating grain-based breakfasts, even whole grains marketed as healthy, were showing higher levels of systemic inflammation and insulin resistance than those who avoided them entirely. But why? Grains had been a staple of human nutrition for thousands of years. What changed? The answer may lie in what modern agriculture has done to wheat and oats over the last 50 years. Through selective breeding and hybridization, the grains available in grocery stores today contain significantly higher levels of certain protein compounds that can trigger immune responses in sensitive individuals. For younger women, the body often manages this response without issue. But after 45, when estrogen levels begin to decline, some researchers believe the immune system becomes more reactive. The gut lining may become more permeable, and suddenly, that morning bowl of oatmeal isn't providing sustained energy the way it used to. What emerging research suggests is that it may be triggering a cascade of inflammation that interferes with fat-burning pathways and signals the liver to shift into storage mode. The grain isn't necessarily harmful, but for some women in this age group, it seems to work against their metabolic goals rather than support them. But grains aren't the only hidden factor. Dr. Voss discovered something equally concerning when she examined her patients' dairy intake. Almost every woman over 45 in her practice had switched to low-fat or fat-free dairy products, believing they were making the healthier choice. And a significant number of them were experiencing hunger spikes, mood crashes, and fat accumulation around the midsection. The connection seemed worth investigating. When food manufacturers remove fat from dairy, they're not just removing calories. They're removing the component that appears to signal satiety to the brain. Fat helps trigger the release of hormones like leptin and cholecystokinin, which communicate to the hypothalamus that the body has been adequately fed. Without that fat, the satisfaction signal may not register as strongly. Hunger can linger. Cravings may intensify. And to make the fat-free yogurt taste acceptable, manufacturers often add sugar, artificial sweeteners, or thickening agents that can spike insulin levels. The result is a product that looks healthy on the label, but may function very differently in the body of a woman experiencing hormonal changes. Dr. Voss conducted a small observation with 12 of her patients. Half continued eating their usual fat-free yogurt. The other half switched to full-fat, unsweetened Greek yogurt. After 4 weeks, the full-fat group reported noticeably reduced hunger between meals. They also experienced fewer evening cravings and an average weight loss of 3.2 pounds. The fat-free group reported no significant change in hunger patterns and actually gained an average of 1.1 pounds. The food that was supposed to help them manage their weight appeared to be doing the opposite. Then came the observation that surprised even Dr. Voss. She began asking patients about their beverage habits. Nearly 70% were starting their mornings with fruit smoothies. Not processed, sugary drinks, but homemade blends of fresh fruit, spinach, and protein powder. They were following the advice of wellness influencers. And yet, their results didn't match the promises. The issue may not be fruit itself. It could be what happens when fruit is liquefied. Whole fruit contains fiber that helps slow the absorption of fructose into the bloodstream. But when that fruit is blended into a smoothie, the fiber structure is disrupted. According to emerging metabolic research, this may reduce its protective effect. The fructose can hit the liver more rapidly, in a more concentrated form than the liver is designed to handle efficiently. Unlike glucose, which every cell in the body can use for energy, fructose is primarily metabolized by the liver. When the liver receives more fructose than it can immediately process, it may convert the excess directly into fat. It may store it in the abdominal region. But what researchers are now observing goes even deeper. High concentrations of fructose appear to interfere with the function of a specific receptor in the liver. This receptor plays a role in signaling the body to release stored fat for energy. When it's functioning optimally, the body can tap into fat reserves during periods of fasting or physical activity. But when fructose floods the liver in liquid form, the beta-3 receptor seems to become less responsive. The body may stop releasing fat as efficiently. It starts holding on to it more stubbornly. This could explain why some women find that calorie restriction or cardio doesn't produce the results they expect. The smoothie that was meant to fuel the morning might be interfering with the body's ability to access its own energy stores. Dr. Voss found herself asking a difficult question. If the foods women were told to eat were working against their changing metabolism, what could they do differently? The answer didn't come from a textbook. It came from a conversation at a conference in Barcelona. There, she met a biochemist named Dr. Miguel Serrano. He had spent a decade studying metabolic patterns in Mediterranean populations. Dr. Serrano had been investigating why women in southern Spain maintained lean body composition well into their 70s. He expected to find genetic advantages or exceptionally high levels of physical activity. Instead, he found something far more specific. The women consumed a particular variety of orange that wasn't commonly found elsewhere. Not the sweet Valencia oranges in supermarkets, but a bitter, almost unpalatable variety known as Citrus aurantium. And they didn't eat the fruit. They used the peel. For generations, women in Seville had been brewing the dried peel into teas and infusions. Primarily for digestive purposes, these women showed notably high activity levels in their beta-3 adrenergic receptors. Even in their 60s and 70s, their bodies seemed to be efficiently mobilizing stored fat for energy. They weren't necessarily exercising more or eating dramatically less, but their metabolism was functioning like much younger women. Dr. Serrano isolated the active compounds in bitter orange peel. He identified a class of bioflavonoids, particularly one called p-synephrine. It appeared to have a stimulating effect on beta-3 receptors. In controlled laboratory studies, when these compounds were introduced to cells, fat oxidation increased significantly. The mechanism seemed straightforward. The bioflavonoids acted like a signal, activating the receptors. They encouraged the body to shift from storage mode to burning mode. It wasn't a stimulant in the traditional sense. It wasn't forcing the metabolism to speed up artificially. It appeared to be helping restore a natural function that had become less efficient over time. Dr. Voss was intrigued. She asked Dr. Serrano if women could simply buy bitter oranges and make the tea themselves. He explained that the bitter orange variety used in Seville wasn't commercially available in most countries. And even if it were, the concentration of p-synephrine in a home-brewed tea would be inconsistent. To approach the dosages seen in research settings, a person would need to consume impractical amounts of fresh peel. It just wasn't feasible to do at home. The only practical method was extraction, a specialized laboratory process that uses controlled temperatures to preserve the delicate bioflavonoids. Dr. Serrano had partnered with a research facility in Valencia to develop this extraction method. The results were being evaluated in a clinical observation with postmenopausal women. The data wasn't fully published yet, but the preliminary findings were promising. Women taking the concentrated extract showed an average reduction in visceral fat of around 12% over 8 weeks. Dr. Voss returned to her practice thinking about what she'd learned. She began sharing information with her patients about the beta-3 receptor system. But she faced a challenge. There wasn't a widely available consumer product that delivered the same type of extract used in Dr. Serrano's work. Most orange peel supplements she found were either poorly extracted or contaminated with agricultural residues. The women who might benefit from this research had limited access to a quality version. Then, nearly a year later, Dr. Voss was contacted by a formulator who had developed a product that combined the extracted bitter orange peel with complementary compounds. The product was called Citrus Burn. From what Dr. Voss could see, it was one of the first commercially available options. Dr. Voss was cautious. The supplement industry is full of products that promise transformation and deliver very little. But when she reviewed the formulation, she noticed something different. The dosage of p-synephrine was consistent with research protocols. It seemed to be a practical application of legitimate research. She mentioned citrus burn to a small group of patients who had reached a plateau. Within 3 weeks, she started hearing back. Energy levels were improving. Cravings were becoming more manageable. One patient mentioned losing 6 pounds in her first month without altering her eating habits significantly. What made the approach compelling was its simplicity. Citrus burn wasn't trying to force the body into an unnatural state. It appeared to be supporting a biological function that had become less efficient due to hormonal changes. For women over 45, the struggle often isn't about a lack of discipline or effort. It may be about a biological shift that standard dieting approaches don't address. But there appears to be a way to support the reversal of that pattern, not through deprivation, not through exhausting routines, but through a targeted approach that works with the body's existing chemistry. If you're a woman over 45 and you've been following the advice but still struggling to see progress, it might not be about willpower. It could be about outdated information. The grains, the low-fat dairy, the fruit smoothies. They may not be supporting your metabolism the way you thought. And until the underlying receptor function is addressed, even the best intentions might not produce the results you're looking for. There's a study that goes into more detail about how the compounds in bitter orange peel interact with beta-3 receptors. I've put a link in the description if you want to look into it further. It might be worth understanding before you plan your next meal, because every choice either supports receptor function or works against it. If you found this perspective helpful and want to hear more about what's actually happening with metabolism after 45, go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot more to explore that doesn't always make it into the mainstream conversation.